I am absolutely sure that the devil was in this. If I can nip this in the bud, if I can stop this, get the plates stolen, all of that will have been for naught. The Nephite record keeping and everything gone.
Oh, because they called him a gold digger or something.
Yeah, they did.
Right?
And he had had a little contact with them, apparently, and so they thought he had an agreement with them that they would share everything they found. Well, this, in his view, did not come into that. It was not gold digging. He was not looking for a treasure, and he's not going to share it with anybody. This is God's assignment to him.
So Dan and I are here in the Joseph Smith family home. Well, Joseph Smith Sr. It was his house. It's Dad's house. Yeah. But this isn't the actual place, right? I mean, this is, I mentioned it was a replica. I hope I was telling the truth.
Yeah, this is a replica. It's built on the foundation of the original.
Oh, it is? Okay.
And it's in the right location, and as near as they can reconstruct it, it's what it would have looked like.
See, and it's mind-blowing to me because from the outside, it looks a lot smaller than what, and it is small. I mean, when you get inside, it's pretty small. But they had how many kids? 8 or 9?
Yeah, and it's about 1,000 square feet. So by our standards, that's very small. Even by their standards, it was pretty small. They wanted a bigger house.
Yeah. If Joseph supposedly kept the plates in the house somewhere, right? Do we know where he may have put them? Was it under a floorboard? Or?
Well, he tried various places. He put them in a barrel underneath beans and things like that. He put them under the hearth and hid them. But he doesn't get the plates for a little while. I mean, he's here for the visit of Moroni. He's here for the first vision. Later on, he's in the frame home, which is what Alvin begins to build for them. And then Alvin dies, which is part of the reason they go back in, and several other reasons. They go into a financial crisis and end up coming back to this home. This is the last home they live in Palmyra as well.
Okay. Now, the frame home, is that here on the property?
It's just a couple hundred yards down the road from us, right where we are now.
But it was it already part of the Smith farm property, or was it someone else's?
Apparently, it was part of the property. They had about 100 acres, as I recall, and so, but they didn't have the money to build that nice house. But Alvin built it for his parents, knowing that they were getting older. Thought that they would have a nice place to grow old in. It turned out not to work out in so many ways. So it was a much larger home than this one.
Yeah.
It was going to be their dream home that they'd worked for all their lives, and then they lost it.
Oh, man, a lot of challenges, to say the least. I noticed in here they have what appears to be a fairly old Bible. I've seen some old Bibles recently, I got to tell you, and that one looks authentic to me.
Yeah, this is not the Smith family Bible, but it's a Bible authentic to the period.
To that period
and
of time.
Probably the kind of Bible that he would have had. You know, not everybody had one.
I was going to ask that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most of us will have a Bible, maybe 4 or 5 Bibles, different translations of the Bible, things like that. But they were expensive in those days, and a family would have one. We know that when Joseph began to translate the Book of Mormon, he didn't have a Bible. They had to go buy one. Well,
would he have needed a Bible, really? I mean,
he just thought he ought to have one. You know, that he's doing this work, he ought to have a Bible.
That's interesting.
But you know, it was expensive enough that it was a major investment for a family to have one. We talk now about the family Bible, but most of us don't have a family Bible.
Yeah.
We have our own copies, and we mark them up and toss them out if they get worn out. But a family Bible in those days was an expensive investment. It was an heirloom that you pass down. So people put their genealogies in them and things like that, because you pass it down from one generation to another.
So a Bible for Joseph Smith Sr., if it weren't passed down, would have represented faith. I mean, he's a very faithful man to have saved up enough to have purchased a family Bible.
He wasn't always a churchgoer because he wasn't satisfied by the churches, but he was a Bible reader. So
I think there's a lot of people that are like that today, right?
Yeah. You know, they've invented a whole category of people they call seekers. For that period, roughly, in U.S. history. People who weren't satisfied with what was out there, but were looking for something better. And of course, they represented a major part of the audience for the restored gospel when it arrived.
Yeah, I like that, seekers, yeah. Are there people, do you know if there are people that still live in this area whose families have been here since then?
I think there are, yeah. There are some who've been here for quite a while. They just tend to get rooted to a farm and, and just it passes on from one generation to another, so.
And then Palmyra town is just down this road, maybe 2-3 miles.
Yeah.
Would that have, do you think, is that where they would have gone to church and to hear the different preachers, or would the preachers come out here?
They're kind of on the border of Palmyra and Manchester here, so they could have gone either way. But yeah, they probably would have gone into Palmyra. And of course, many people are familiar with the multitude of churches in Palmyra still today. The one famous street corner that has 4 churches, one on each corner. Actually, there's a 5th one just next to another. So they're not old enough to have been there when Joseph was here, but they sort of represent the cacophony of religious voices that would have puzzled Joseph.
Boy, that is so true. It's so characteristic of his whole story that he weaves, that he tells about his youth and the low here and low there, is for someone now in contemporary times to go into Palmyra, and even those, like you say, those weren't necessarily the churches, there's still evidence that there is, especially for an area that's not populated very, there's several hundred people and there's these churches on every corner.
Well, I think one factor may be, I don't mean to be crass about it, but they didn't have television. They didn't have a lot of nightlife. And a great preacher, a really good preacher, would provide some entertainment, some change in the monotony of farm life and the normal routine. And so you went probably out of religious zeal, but also out of a desire to just hear something other than your own voice and your own family and so on. So church-going was a big deal in those days.
And we know from his record, at least, that they were kind of divided in the family.
Yeah, they were.
But there was no animosity, it sound like.
No, they didn't have fights over it doesn't sound like. They had discussions, and some people had opinions.
Now, I ran as best I could around environs of the Hill of Cumorah with some fake plates and things. Did Joseph, do we know, did he take a horse out there or anything? Or does he say he was on foot?
Yeah, when he first went out, when he finally went out to be able to get the plates from the hill, he took Joseph Knight Sr.'s wagon.
Oh.
And when Joseph Knight woke up the next morning, he still wasn't back, and he didn't know. And so I think it was Lucy Mack who explains to him that, well, Joseph borrowed your wagon. You kind of hope you don't mind, but I'm sure there was a moment of panic there with Joseph Knight, who was visiting, thinking, where's my horse? Where's my wagon?
So was he gone that long?
It was a little ways. It's a few miles. It's not very far, but it takes a little bit to get there.
And then when he's
no
there,
good roads.
But when he's there with Moroni, do we know how long his conversations with him might have been?
We don't know for sure, but they did go over some things. Moroni told him things that he doesn't necessarily share. When he went out, he just had to go out and get the plates out of the hole, put them in. He took his wife with him, and she
he was
waited at the
married
wagon.
by then.
Yes.
When he finally got him.
Yeah. So then he brings them back and then has to hide them. And at one point, he is running through the woods carrying them, which is a really interesting fact. He'd have to hide them in various places away from the house because people were trying to get them from him. And that's always been striking to me. A lot of people today will say, well, he never had any plates. But the people who lived around him were sure he did, and that they were valuable and they wanted them. So it's really interesting. They had more faith in it, even though most of those didn't join the church, but they had absolute confidence that he had plates.
That he had something of value.
Yeah.
And we call them gold plates.
Yeah.
The golden plates lay hidden. Are they gold? Were they gold?
They're not pure gold. They're we don't know for sure.
We don't know.
Because we haven't done an assay on them or anything like that.
Right.
But they were probably a gold alloy, because gold by itself is really malleable.
Right.
And it's soft, in other words. For a metal, it's too soft. It wouldn't retain the engravings and so on. So I think a lot of people have come to the conclusion they were probably a kind of copper gold blend. They would have looked like gold to the ordinary untrained eye, but there's a lot of copper in them, which gave them a little more firmness.
Do you think the excitement around the plates was primarily value-based? Or was it more just the enemy, the opposition saying, you need to get these plates from this guy? You know what I mean? Like it's just take them away, or we want to cash them in for money.
Oh, I am absolutely sure that the devil was in this. If I can nip this in the bud, if I can stop this, get the plates stolen, all of that will have been for naught. The Nephite record keeping and everything gone. But he didn't have to work very hard because there was a lot of gold fever around here. People were digging for old Spanish buried treasure. That was a
Here?
big thing here. There probably wasn't ever any. But there were stories, there was folklore of Spanish treasure here. And so they thought he'd finally found some. And so they were going to get it from him.
Because they called him a gold digger
Yeah,
or
they
something,
did.
right?
And he had had a little contact with them, apparently. And so they thought he had an agreement with them that they would share everything they found. Well, this, in his view, did not come into that. It was not gold digging. He was not looking for a treasure. And he's not going to share it with anybody. This is God's assignment to him. So, and he wasn't going to profit from it either. So,
Yeah. Yeah, the plates will be of great value, but not
monetarily.
Not economically. Yeah.
No, I mean, his first thought when he sees them is, wow, my family's economic woes are over. Look at this, and then the angel rebukes him and says, no, that's not what they're for. Don't have those thoughts in your head.
Well, that is exactly what any 21-year-old newly married man would think it is truly unbelievable for him to lift up the rock and there they are, shiny and bright or dim or whatever, but to have those thoughts, this is buried treasure.
It would be absolutely natural. And he must think, we've been on the edge of poverty or in poverty all of my life, and now we're not, because look at all this gold. And they weighed between 40 and 60 pounds. So even if they're gold alloy, that's a lot of money right there.
Boy, no kidding.
So, but he's not going to be able to use it for that. And he'll spend the rest of his life pretty much on the edge of poverty.
That's true.
So.
Yeah. Well, this is just it's just so neat to be here and to kind of think of it in terms of the global reach that this has had, all starting in such humble origins.
Yeah.
So if they slept in there, did all 8 kids sleep upstairs?
Apparently most of them, or if not all of them, slept upstairs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Should we go take a look?
Let's.
Yeah, let's head up. Okay. And, oh my. That's wow. This is, I guess I can imagine. And then with that other room over there, I can imagine if they had, how many kids were there? 8?
Yeah.
This is their work, or would have been. I'm the original, right? I mean, is it them just clear cutting a field?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They have to clear the fields, and so they use the wood to then build the house. So.
And they've got to, so these fields out here that they would have worked were initially as thick as the Sacred Grove area.
Yeah, you've got to imagine that everything here pretty much was covered with that kind of forest. And so to do any kind of farming, you have to first clear the trees.
And then take them and build a home.
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah. So we know that even before the first vision, Joseph goes out to a place where he'd left his axe. He'd been clearing trees out there. And they would go out and they would get maple syrup and that sort of thing from the trees. But they had to make everything themselves. You didn't call in the home builders to take care of your house. You built it yourself.
So it would have probably been, if we can imagine that the boys probably slept up here, maybe even some of the sisters slept back there, but it would have been possibly this area where he was aroused from his sleep by the light growing brighter and brighter.
If we're not in the exact room because this is a replica, we might be in the same airspace, if you will.
Right. And so there's no mention of any of the siblings waking up, and none of them witnessed what he...
No. And some critics have said, well, that's not very plausible, but I'm thinking the same God who can cause a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, who can create the universe, can certainly make some kids stay asleep. I mean, wouldn't parents love to have that power? But
yes, I don't mean to belly laugh at what God is capable of doing, but the way you mentioned it is actually kind of humorous. It's true. Yeah, it is. It's in fact sobering to think that what occurred here. How many times was it the night that 3 or 4 times?
It's 3 times, then again during the day.
Oh, that's right. When he's leaving the field and he gets faint, jumping a fence or something. But to think, such humble beginnings in a place that is known for nothing. I mean, really.
Right.
when I think about the neighbors that still live around here, where they're just going about their business, do they know? Do they understand how global the reach is from their little town of Palmyra?
Yeah. I suspect they don't, and it really amazes me, but I'm thinking, well, that's probably the way it was in the time of the ancient prophets or Jesus himself. There's a wonderful Peter Bruegel painting which shows Jesus carrying his cross on the way to Calvary. In the foreground and the background, all around him, people are playing games and working at their crafts and all this sort of thing, and they're just not seeing. And yet, the most important event in the history of humanity is occurring right then. Same thing here, and people don't notice. Yeah. The really important things often go unnoticed.
The kind of our journey is about finding evidence for the veracity and divinity of the Book of Mormon. What do we find here that can support the Book of Mormon's, the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon?
At a very basic level, I think what you find here is tangible reality. This is not some fairy tale. It's not something that happens a long time ago in a faraway, unspecified place. This is something that happened right here on this spot. The first vision happens a little ways away. The visitation of Moroni happens in this very space. The Smiths were farming this soil, moving the rocks that are still here, cutting the trees that are still out there, and so it gives it a sense of reality. For a lot of people who will probably never come here, it's just a story they've read about in a book, and they may believe it, but it's a real place.
Yeah, it's not Camelot.
Yeah,
somebody could say, well, Middle Earth is real. You've all seen the Tolkien movies. Well, take us there as a documentary. Where is it?
Right.
Whereas we literally are standing on ground where the Joseph Smith Sr. family lived. Check the county records. This is their property. That's their land. You may or may not believe that the first vision occurred, but there is at least, in fact, evidence that it may have occurred because that actual grove of trees is where he claims that it occurred.
Yeah, everything he describes is here.
Yeah.
We can see it. We can touch it. It's real.
It's fascinating. I love that. Yeah. Very basic evidence that it's all true. Like you say, if you can't get out here on your own, we're here to testify to you that this place is real, that it literally is convenient to the town of Palmyra, a hill, or Manchester, a hill. We went to the hill. We've seen the hill. We've seen a place where maybe Moroni could have put the plates and then brought them back to Joseph Smith. He claims it was pretty close to his house. It's only a couple miles. Ooh, I like that.
Some people are offended by that, the idea that it took place in such ordinary locations.
It's so ordinary.
But every event does. If you go to the Holy Land, the rocks and the dirt are just rocks and dirt. That's the way it is, but it's real. Those things really happen there. They don't glow. It's not, it's a real place.
Well, you tend to romanticize in your mind the Holy Land, or even for Latter-day Saints coming to the Sacred Grove for the first time, or other church history places that are in your mind and in your heart. You've been reading about it forever. First of all, you get there, there's proof that it's real.
Right.
The places, the people were real. Sidney Rigdon, all these other people were real. The thing that I also find so cool is that in a township, a county even, that is so not overpopulated, a handful of people, that these witnesses that came forward, there were enough of them that they were good men, that they deserved it, that they were able to see and feel and touch and hear all the things that they saw and heard.
Many people here probably dream, I would imagine, some of the churches roundabout, of going to the Holy Land. Most of them don't realize that experiences of the same level as the biblical experiences happen right in their backyard.
Yeah. How cool is that? That is pretty cool. I've been dying to see what's in this room back here.
Let's have a look.
Maybe that's where the daughters slept.
Yeah,
Let's check that out.